You have until tomorrow to sell your land, or you'll never set foot on it again. That was the echo, the absolute hollow threat, of Eleanor Vance, the HOA president, as I stared at the freshly poured concrete wall blocking Oak Canyon Trace, the only road to my property. 2 years of savings, months of planning, all potentially gone, our dream home impossible, ruined by a woman who thought community leadership meant petty dictatorship. But as I pulled a worn legal folder from my glove compartment, a folder my retired attorney father, Marcus, had insisted I carry, a genuine, unshakable smile spread across my face. It wasn't just defiance. It was the satisfaction of knowing that every single move they had made, every petty obstacle they had erected, was merely a precursor to their own self-destruction. These arrogant tyrants had just walked straight into a trap, one that Marcus and I had spent 14 months perfecting. Their power play, this act of pure malice, had activated a hidden contingency in the original deed, a detail so obscure and yet so ironclad it would turn their exclusive world upside down and cost them what they valued most, their absolute control and the illusion of their invincibility. Where are you watching this from? Drop your location in the comments, because when this story is over, you'll understand why my father always told me, the devil's in the details, son, and why you should never cross someone whose family knows real estate law better than they know their own names. It all began 14 months prior when my wife, Sophia, and I spotted a listing for a gorgeous, secluded 3-acre parcel, the Peninsula parcel, deep within the prestigious Blackwood Creek Reserve. The price was suspiciously low for such prime Arizona high-desert real estate. Marcus, my retired real estate lawyer father, immediately warned me, "Jake, if something looks too good to be true, it has an HOA problem. It's usually the unwritten, unspoken rules that catch you." The snag was simple. Sole access was via Oak Canyon Trace, a private gravel road running entirely through land managed by the Blackwood Creek HOA. Marcus offered to help review the purchase agreement, cautioning, "HOAs are like little kingdoms, Jake. But we'll make sure your access rights are ironclad, and then some. We won't just secure the path, we'll secure our ability to threaten them with an alternative path." Dad spent an entire weekend crafting an explicit, permanent easement clause, making it impossible to challenge without violating state law. Conspiratorially, he added several detailed appendices, including one regarding Lot 412C, the community's centerpiece, the Blue Heron Lagoon. The language was deliberately dense and almost redundant, designed to be skipped by a busy, overconfident reader. When I questioned him about why he focused on the lake, he just gave me that knowing, tired smile he saved for legal fools. They're too arrogant to read what they sign, Jake. They'll glance at the title, assume it's boilerplate environmental data, and initial it. That's the first lesson I'm teaching you about leveraging their hubris. I'll never forget my first meeting with Eleanor Vance. She was immaculately dressed, projecting an aura of effortless authority, with a smile that never, and I mean never, quite reached her eyes. She carried herself like a sovereign addressing a peasant. As she flipped through the thick contract, I watched her skim past the vital easement details, barely glancing at the appendices, especially the ones about Lot 412C, before initialing each page with a sharp, impatient click of her pen. Marcus's prediction was already proving prophetic. Her confidence in her control of the community was making her catastrophically careless with the legal documentation. I later learned Eleanor had desperately tried to purchase the property herself to build a massive, community-enhancing and property value-boosting for her fountain. Her rejected offer had left a deep, personal wound, fueling her immediate contempt for us. Sophia and I quickly began designing our modern craftsman home, focusing on sustainable, natural aesthetics. But the trouble started when we attended our first community meeting. Eleanor made pointed comments about outsiders bringing inappropriate development and disrupting the established aesthetic. She looked right at me when she talked about unnecessary modern glass boxes. As we left, Sam Reynolds, a friendly retired Air Force colonel living nearby, quietly warned me, "Watch your back with the HOA, Jake. Eleanor rules with an iron fist, and she views this neighborhood like her personal, curated museum." That feeling of security evaporated a few minutes later when I accidentally overheard Eleanor speaking with Victor Sterling, the HOA vice president and a former regional bank executive. "Don't worry," she hissed, her voice a low, hard vibration filled with entitlement. "We have ways to make him want to sell that land back to us, at our price. We'll drown him in red tape until he folds." I sat in my truck, adrenaline spiking, realizing this wasn't mere bureaucracy, it was a targeted campaign. I called my dad. His response was immediate. "Sounds like it's time to start preparing Plan B. They're making noise. And remember, document everything. Keep a journal. Record the dates, times, and exactly what they say." The next few weeks were a bureaucratic nightmare. I submitted my building permit application to the city planning department. It took 6 months, not 6 weeks. My application was rejected repeatedly for increasingly trivial reasons. The fire break calculation was off by 0.2 meters. The shadow study was inconclusive. The font size on the blueprint legend was wrong. But Sophia, doing her own digging, quickly uncovered the reason. Scott Taylor, the city planning officer handling our file, was a regular golfing buddy of Victor Sterling. The corruption wasn't subtle. They were using personal connections to weaponize the city's regulatory power against us. We had been flagged. The corruption was clear and dirty. While fighting the permit battle, we received our first official HOA violation notice, a fine for improperly maintained, undeveloped property. Translation: native desert grass needed cutting. The fine was $50 a day. The principle of it infuriated me. It was harassment. Rather than argue, I hired a professional landscaping company. The foreman, Raul, laughed, saying Blackwood Creek had a county-wide reputation for pettiness. "Last month, they fined someone for using the wrong type of desert rock in their xeriscaping," he told me. When the work was done, I took extensive photos and sent them with my payment. Eleanor's response was a terse, 3-word email. "Compliance acknowledged." Eleanor. This petty escalation only strengthened my resolve. Following Marcus's advice, I began meticulously documenting everything. Saving every email, legally recording every phone call, and keeping detailed notes in a chronological timeline. Sophia researched the board members' vulnerabilities. At the next HOA meeting, I calmly asked about selective enforcement, citing specific instances of other neglected lots. Eleanor cut me off mid-sentence, sharp as glass. "That is not an agenda item for tonight, Mr. Harrison. We don't entertain conspiracy theories. Submit your complaints in writing." As I walked out, Victor Sterling approached me, tall, imposing, and looking down his expensive nose. "Sell the land back to us. It would be easier for everyone. We can stop this now." When I declined, his false friendliness evaporated. "Then let's see who has more staying power. We've been here for 20 years. You? You're just a tourist who picked the wrong zip code." After months of persistence, and after bypassing Scott Taylor to meet directly with the department head, presenting my evidence of the unusual delays, my permit was finally approved. The victory felt immense. I scheduled the construction company to begin site preparation the following Monday. But the very next day, a bright orange notice appeared at the entrance to Oak Canyon Trace. Road maintenance in progress. No access for 3 to 4 days. It was clearly fake, a desperate, last-minute delay tactic. I had to pay the construction company a significant cancellation fee to reschedule. For 5 days, the barricades remained, but drone footage confirmed no work was being done. It was a total lie. When I finally reached Eleanor, she gave me transparently insincere excuses about complicated engineering concerns and geotechnical shifts. Marcus then advised sending a formal legal letter demanding access. Warning: they're testing how far they can push you, Jake. Time to push back with consequences. The letter was delivered by certified mail. Victor called the next day. The road will be reopened tomorrow, but the board has voted to implement new infrastructure protection regulations. I knew that tone. It wasn't a surrender. It was a prelude to disaster. 3 days after construction finally started, I arrived at the property and my blood turned to ice. Overnight, the HOA had constructed a permanent, thick, 8-foot-tall concrete barrier across Oak Canyon Trace, securing it with steel rebar. A huge sign declared, "Private HOA property. No trespassing." All access was permanently severed. I felt something inside me snap. The betrayal, the sheer audacity of it. In a fit of pure, blinding rage, I drove straight to Eleanor's house. "You can't do this. We have legal easement rights." Eleanor just smiled that cold, dead smile. leaning against her polished mahogany door frame. The board voted unanimously that the road is exclusive HOA property now. Your easement doesn't apply anymore. You have until tomorrow to sell your land, or you'll never set foot on it again. That night, I was defeated. Maybe we should just sell, I told Sophia, pacing our cramped rental, staring at the blueprints that suddenly felt like a joke. I can't fight them forever. They have unlimited time and money. She looked up, radiating a quiet, determined fire. You think we should just give up? After everything we've invested, the money, the time, the emotional toll? They're bullies, Jake, and bullies only win when we let them. We have Marcus's plan. It's time to use it. Her resolve was the flint I needed. The next morning, I called my father. Dad, they built a permanent wall. We need to activate the contingency plan. Marcus arrived, legal briefcase in hand, a sense of patient anticipation on his face. We flipped to Appendix 5, Alternative Access Contingency. The clause read, in the event primary access rights are permanently denied by any HOA action, the buyer maintains the right to activate the alternative access easement through Lot 237B without additional compensation. Lot 237B, Marcus revealed with a mischievous grin, was a narrow, pre-existing strip of land running directly through the center of the Blackwood Creek Reserve, right past the manicured front lawns of Eleanor, Victor, and Carolyn. This detail had been clearly, legally disclosed in the appendices Eleanor had signed. Marcus had essentially drafted a clause that allowed me to route heavy machinery through the neighborhood's delicate inner loop, guaranteeing massive disruption. We drafted a formal notice activating our right to the alternative access easement. The letter included a detailed map showing how our new proposed construction access road would cut straight through the heart of the community. The final paragraph, construction of the temporary access road, including all heavy machinery transit, will commence in 7 days. The reaction was immediate. A frantic Eleanor Vance demanded an emergency meeting that evening. The community center was packed, not just with board members, but with terrified neighbors. Victor, with the stern HOA attorney, tried to intimidate us with complex legal jargon, but Marcus methodically dismantled each argument using the HOA's own signed documents. Andrea Blake, in a moment of stunning bravery that cost her social standing, spoke up in our defense. The Harrisons have every legal right to pursue this alternative access route under the agreement we signed. The board acted illegally by blocking the original easement. Victor shot her a look of pure venom. Your loyalty should be to this board, Andrea, not to outsiders. Eleanor lost her composure, shouting and snapping at the residents. During a recess, Victor offered to buy my land for 20% above market value. I politely declined, then casually detailed my plans for the construction truck trips that would rumble past the community pool and tennis courts for the next 6 months. The residents' alarm was palpable. They realized the board's petty war was about to destroy their peace. Andrea pulled me aside, warning me that Eleanor's weakness was her fear of losing control, and revealed there were serious irregularities in the HOA's financials she had been tracking. Eleanor made a final tactical move. She removed the concrete wall to neutralize our alternative access trigger. However, she secretly worked with Victor and Scott Taylor to fast-track a proposal designating the peninsula parcel as an environmental conservation zone, a move that would make construction impossible, even with access. She thought she had checkmated me, sacrificing the pawn, the wall, to save her queen, her control. She thought wrong. I called for an all-hands meeting of the entire Blackwood Creek membership. The community center was packed beyond capacity, murmuring with anxious energy. Eleanor sat there, smugly confident her conservation zone filing had won the war. I bypassed the board and methodically presented evidence: the selective enforcement, the fake road maintenance, the recorded vandalism, and finally, the planned environmental conservation zone. The residents' faces were a roadmap of shock, then fury, directed squarely at their leadership. Then came the moment we had been building toward for 14 months. I displayed the original purchase agreement on the projector, highlighting the final, obscure clause in Appendix 7 that the entire board had signed. This attempted zoning restriction, this act of bad faith, triggers the final contingency, I explained, letting the silence draw out until it was deafening. This provision, which every member of this board initialed and approved last year, gives me control over Lot 412C, the Blue Heron Lagoon. Marcus explained the legal history. The lake parcel was actually part of the larger Harrison property, only leased to the HOA, and the control was legally transferred when the HOA signed the agreement limiting my building rights. The lake, the absolute jewel of the community, was legally mine if they blocked my construction. I watched Eleanor's face as comprehension dawned, pure, undiluted shock, giving way to disbelief, then to horrified understanding. She was utterly ruined. "You can't possibly," she sputtered, half rising from her seat. "That contract is fraudulent. You tricked us." Andrea and Marcus quickly confirmed. Everything was legally binding. The HOA had signed away their right to the community's crowning jewel if they attempted to prevent me from building. I proposed a settlement. The HOA could retain control of the Blue Heron Lagoon under 5 non-negotiable conditions. First, permanently remove all barriers and acknowledge my full access rights. Second, cancel the environmental conservation zone proposal. Third, refund all violation fees with interest and compensate me for construction delays and vandalism. Fourth, fully cooperate with the police investigation into the vandalism. And fifth, the entire current board resigns immediately and publicly. The residents voted overwhelmingly to accept my proposal. As Eleanor Vance was essentially forced to surrender her position, her face was a mask of cold fury. She leaned close to me. "You have no idea what you've just done," she whispered, her voice venomous, confirming her obsession. "I was the only one who could keep this place running properly. It will all collapse without me." 3 months later, construction on our dream home was well underway. Andrea Blake, the new transitional HOA president, had implemented sweeping changes, establishing term limits, a transparent financial audit process, and an actual community appeals system. Neighbors who had previously been intimidated began reaching out and offering help. The community was healing. For those wondering about Eleanor and Victor, Scott Taylor, the city planner, was placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. Victor Sterling resigned from his banking position after certain financial irregularities came to light. Eleanor Vance moved to another state entirely, the ultimate humiliation being social ostracism from the community she had once ruled. 6 months after that fateful meeting, Sophia and I finally moved into our completed home. We sat on our porch overlooking the Blue Heron Lagoon, the property we had technically gained control of, and then returned to the community. A small, custom-made wooden sign near the water's edge simply read, "The Blue Heron Lagoon, restored to the community by the Harrison family." A subtle, permanent monument to their failure. "Do you regret any of it?" Sophia asked, resting her head on my shoulder. I shook my head, smiling. "Not at all. We fought for our home. But sometimes you have to fight not just for yourself, but for everyone who can't fight for themselves. We fixed a broken system." That letter from Eleanor's lawyers demanding the removal of the lake sign arrived in our mailbox that week. I just laughed, tossed it into the recycling bin, and went back to enjoying the sound of silence. Across the lake, Eleanor's former house displayed a for sale sign. And that, my friends, is sweeter than any contract I've ever signed. So, here's the question I want to leave you with. Did Jake Harrison, driven to desperation, go too far by taking legal control of the community's prized possession, the Blue Heron Lagoon, even if he gave it back? Or was he completely justified in using the legal trap his father laid, playing by the very rules the arrogant HOA leadership set and signed? Let me know in the comments. Where do you draw the line between justice and vengeance? Share your thoughts. Hit that like button if this story got your blood pumping, and subscribe so you don't miss the next unbelievable episode.